Today, we learn how to close the attitude and relationship gap with your students in episode number 541.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with Principal Kafele. Baruti Kafele has written 10 books and travels the world talking about teaching and education. Baruti, as I listen to your YouTube videos and read your story, you really have an important emphasis for us as we start our school year. Would you tell us about maybe a teacher that didn't help you so much and one that did?
My story is long. It started good, as an elementary school student, but things started happening in my life, which happens to so many children, just the challenges of life. It forced me to just lose interest in school, my ambition, everything academic. And I ultimately stopped going at the turn of 9th grade, hung out in the streets. Mother wasn't going to give up on me. Went to a Catholic school. She thought that would save me. That didn't work. Went to a public school. That didn't work. Went to another public school while living with my father. That didn't work. And then ultimately went to another school. So 4 schools, ultimately graduated in 5 years with a 1.5 GPA because I simply had no ambition. I had something inside that needed something to unleash it, but I didn't know that at the time. To fast forward, went on and graduated from college, summa cum laude, but while there, met 3 professors that really showed an interest in me. And one of them told me that I was a writer. Yeah, I'd never heard that before. And he said, "You are a writer." And it's solely because that professor said to me that I was a writer that I have written the 10 books that I've written and the many more that I plan to write. And then I had another professor that said that I was a speaker. And here I knew I was very shy. I continue to be shy to this day, but I figured out how to mask it. But he said I was a speaker. He said I'm an orator. And I took him up on it. And I've been public speaking for the past 33 years. And then finally, I had a professor that told me that I was a leader and I knew I was a follower, but he saw something else in me. I believed him over time and went on and led 4 schools.
How can we teachers be the ones who change someone's life like yours? Because what you've done is remarkable, but the fact that you can trace it back to things that teachers or professors said is even more exciting for me as a teacher.
Yeah, because see, these 3, I've heard people say things to me in the attempt to motivate me. But the thing that's distinguished these 3 professors is that they had credibility, not because of their titles, but because of who they were. There was something about what they said, how they said it, the conviction with which they said it, that I believed it. So because of the way it was presented to me, what was presented to me, and ultimately me connecting and being convinced that these men were saying something to me that seemed real and authentic, I internalized it. So I say to teacher, it works the exact same way. I don't care what comes out of your mouth to a youngster. If you haven't earned credibility, if you haven't established a bond, a trust, respect between the 2 of you, then your words are more than likely going to be very shallow and very hollow in terms of how they're being received. But if, on the other hand, you've earned a relationship, a trust, a respect, a bond with that youngster is going to grasp anything you throw at that youngster because you matter to that youngster.
So, Baruti, what is your word to teachers about how we should start the school year?
I say to start the school year, just to kind of piggyback off of what I just said, let's forge those relationships first. Let's have in mind that ultimately we want to be considered as a family of learners. We're in this thing together. We're in this thing with this one common goal, one common purpose, one common mission, one common vision in terms of where we will be as a result of me, the teacher, being the teacher in that classroom. That youngster may become someone else with another teacher. Who knows what that youngster will be, but the mindset, the attitude of that teacher is, because I'm here, you're at an advantage, and I refuse to accept anything less than the best that you have to offer toward going to that next level of accomplishment.
Awesome. I love that. And I was on Twitter today looking at some comments people have had about your recent work. And somebody said, it's an early Christmas because I got Closing the Attitude Gap.
I saw it.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
What is the attitude gap? Tell us.
The attitude gap is a takeoff from the achievement gap. I've said for decades that I have no usage for the achievement gap in terms of what it means, the definition and all that, because my belief is that children are walking into a school brilliant, but I'm concerned about whether or not they have a willingness to embrace what it is that we're giving them every day. So I said, I'm not worried about their achievement. I said, that's going to follow if I can get to their attitudes and get them believing in themselves, believing in the power of learning, and believing in the prospects of their future. So I said the attitude gap is simply the gap between those students who have the will to achieve excellence and those who do not. But then I looked at staff and I said, man, I can't ignore the attitude of staff. And I said, there's a gap there too. And I defined it as the attitude gap relative to staff is the gap between those educators who have the will to be amazing at their craft and those who do not, putting an emphasis on this word craft while asking the teacher, is teaching and learning, is this your thing? Is this that thing that you said, I've got to be phenomenal. I've got to be extraordinary at this, because if I'm operating at that level, then that means my students are at that level with me, because otherwise, and what is the rationale for saying that I'm at a high level when my students are not up there with me?
Oh, Baruti, when you have that gap, when you have teachers who are passionate, excited, driven to make a difference in the children's life, and perhaps they have some teachers who may not be that way. That's hard. What do we do when we find ourselves in that circumstance?
Yeah, that's difficult. And see, that puts a heavy burden, a heavy onus on the shoulders of the leadership of that school. Because if I'm leader and I know I have those individuals in my school, then what kind of relationships am I forging with them so that I can be productive and constructive with them to get them to that place? So as a former principal, I've been in that position multiple times, and I knew I couldn't correct it in a staff meeting environment. It required me to have those one-on-one conversations with teachers, helping them to understand what it is that I and we are trying to accomplish with these children. In my case, these urban inner city kids from low socioeconomic environments, what it is. So belief that despite the hand that was dealt them at birth, that these kids can still soar with the best of them. But toward doing so, it's on the way I lead. Not only the things I say, but what I model as well in terms of what it is that I'm expecting of all of us.
Okay, you said something that's a hot button for me. I love it that you said that when you're working with teachers, that it's better for one-on-one conversations than to address those weaknesses in staff meetings. Because I'll tell you, I'm the type of person personally that if a principal says something negative, I automatically assume I'm doing it. Even if I know that I'm not. And, a lot of teachers will say, I wish they would just address the person or the people that this applies to so they can improve. Right. Why is that so important?
Yeah, because see, what happens is the principal is in there. He's upset. He or she is upset about something or with somebody. So there's 100 people sitting in the staff meeting, and the principal is talking to the one person through the 100, and so the other 99, are, as you said, are questioning: is he talking to me? Is he talking about me? So that's counterproductive. But see, young me didn't understand that. More seasoned and wiser me figured that out. That now I've got to make sure that I just never come across that way in a staff meeting, but instead have the conversation with the teacher in question, but not in terms of a corrective conversation, building a conversation, building a rapport, building a relationship so that we can have this ongoing collegial relationship toward helping this teacher to get to that place where we need that teacher to be.
Well, and aren't great principals somewhat of teachers because they're helping teach teachers the craft and the attitude of being an amazing teacher?
That's right. They are teachers. In my newest book, The Aspiring Principal 50, right in the first chapter, I remind principals, aspiring principals, that principals are always teachers. You never relinquish that title nor that role, although you now wear that title of principal. At your core, you're still a teacher. You're just teaching, and you're teaching in a different way, in a different form. And one of those would be your role as teacher as it relates to staff member.
Okay, Baruti, as we finish up, would you give all of us teachers out here a 30-second pep talk for the first day of school?
For that first day of school, teacher, walk into that building firmly entrenched into your why. When I say your why, I mean your purpose, your reason, your because. What are you there for? What's that specificity? Not that I want to make a difference, not that I want to make an impact, but what's that thing that dominates your thinking, dominates your thoughts, dominates your conversation, keeps you up at night, keeps you tossing and turning? What's that thing that you said, I must accomplish this before anything else? And that's probably your why. Make sure that you are rooted. Make sure you are grounded in that. Don't be distracted by the noise to your left or your right. Stay focused on your purpose, your why.
Baruti, I appreciate your authenticity and telling your story. You know, it's so tempting, I think, when people hit the stage to act like life is perfect. And, we all have a story to tell, and we love the kids, and it's about being amazing for our students and really believing in them and knowing and spotting their talents and what they can do well. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you very much.
Here's your challenge for today. Number 1, how will you start day 1 building relationships? Don't just read your syllabus. You've got to start building that relationship and connecting with your students on a personal level. You got to relate before you educate. That's kind of the order it goes in. Second is check your attitude. Have you decided that you want to be an excellent, compelling, engaging teacher who improves your craft every day? It starts with a decision that that's what you want to be. Just like I challenged you in a previous episode last week, we start with our to-be list before we create our to-do list. Good luck as you start back school. I started last week. It was amazing on Friday, and I was just so excited to be there and see my students.